Most of what we take personally isn't personal at all. The second agreement, don't take anything personally, cuts right to the core of our triggers, our old stories, and the parts of us that still think other people's behavior is a reflection of our worth. Here's the truth. When someone judges you, projects onto you, or misunderstands you, they're revealing their inner world, not yours. And yet, our nervous system grabs it instantly. What did I do wrong? What does this mean about me? In this episode, Diana and I explore how to unhook from that reflex through the lens of projection, attachment, and the neuroscience of threat. We also dig into the dimension of the mind, what Ruiz calls the Matote, and the apparent necessity of human suffering. We're talking emotional sovereignty, boundaries, and the freedom that comes when you stop taking responsibility for other people's perceptions. If you're ready to step out of the story and back into your power, this one's for you.
This is Realigned and Unfiltered.
Together, we're peeling back the layers, exploring consciousness, and transforming life's messiness into meaning. So the second agreement is this: do not take things personally. Why is that so triggering? Because we all do it.
Right.
So the
Right.
collective experience is when somebody says something, does something, projects something, it's pretty hard not to take it on.
Yeah.
And that is a collective experience. I'm not alone. You're not alone. Whoever's listening is not alone in having fallen prey for another person's poison.
Oh, I think it's also, I mean, it sounds very simple on the surface, right? Okay, yeah, don't think things personally. It's easy to say that to someone, but to actually integrate it and comprehend it, that's what we do really well here at Realigned and Unfiltered. We're talking about these items through the lens of psychology, through this awakening process, the neuroscience perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and the consciousness perspectives. We're going to break it down a little bit here so that it does become more liberating, and really understanding that this agreement is not telling us ignore other people, just like ignore everybody and like live just siloed in the world. But
Right.
it's rather it's telling us to reclaim our power.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we're going to break down here, right?
Yeah, reclaim our power, reclaim our sovereignty. And it's not
Uh,
sovereignty over others, it's just sovereignty in ourselves, right?
yeah.
Let's not make anybody else the authority on who we are.
Right. Right.
Perhaps you're the authority of who you are. And so when somebody says something to you, Ruiz uses the example of stupidity. When somebody says, so stupid, do you agree or disagree? Do you say to yourself, oh my gosh, how do they know?
Yeah.
Or do you say, that's true, you know? Or do you stand in your sovereignty and say, no, I'm not?
Right.
You can have your poison back because anything and everything that people say and do and put out there ultimately is a projection or a result of their own dream state, right? Remembering that
Yeah.
we're talking
Mhm.
about the dream state here.
Right. Right, right. And then also, what he said about matter being the mirror and the smoke, right? The smoke in the mirror. We are the mirror, and then the is like the distortion,
Mhm.
keeping us from knowing who we are. So people projecting things on us or saying certain things to us, they're speaking from their programming, from what their insecurities that they're trying to project onto us, to our mirror, to ourselves.
And yet, so many times, and we will realize this if we go back through our lives and realize, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I think what I think? All that
Mm,
programming that we received in childhood, right? So much of what we believe and function from is out of certain agreements that we have made And what I'm saying here is that we have agreed to believe the things that have been said to us, the things that
Right.
have been told of us. So if you take something personally, it means that you agree or that you are agreeing to whatever was said. So as soon as you agree, the poison of those words becomes your poison, right? In
Mhm.
the last episode, when we talked about being impeccable with your words and the spells that we speak with our words, we talked about how it can be like black magic. We can speak a curse, right? So if
Yeah.
somebody speaks something to you that is negative or that is ill meaning or ill intentioned, and it's like they're handing you poison. And if you decide to take it and swallow it, then the poison becomes yours. And Ruiz talks about being then trapped in hell on earth because you've swallowed
Oh,
the poison, right? So then this agreement, ultimately, this is my favorite thing about this agreement. This agreement allows you to gain immunity. If
yeah.
you
I
refuse
love
to
that.
take everything personally, you become immune to the poison and thus free from the hell that most of us are living in, right? You can't trap me with your poison. No, thank you. I'm going to not take it personally when you need your pain to come out on me so that you can feel better.
That's really deep because when we realize that every human being is walking through life through their internal world, right? In NLP, we talk about filters, how we filtered the world around us, what the Raz is out there looking for. So when we realize that everyone is walking, having their own filters, their own perceptions of their world, their own beliefs, their own conditioning, their own story within their nervous systems, we're realizing, okay, we don't have to take that on. And it's actually a little bit like wild to think about that we've actually really never met oh, the real version of anyone that's the person behind the conditioning, right? We've only met the perceptions of what people have had because it's interesting to also think about like we're born and then we go through all this conditioning and programming. We grow up and then become aware like okay, now who I am is actually affecting the results I see in the world. I don't want to see this reality play out anymore.
Mhm.
So now we have to do the work, do the deprogramming, and come more to our authentic selves to find that real version of us that isn't putting out perceptions or offending people or making people feel bad just because I myself may be feeling incompetent or I have, lack of confidence or I'm scared or whatnot. It's coming to that point, I think, as in some point in time in your life to realize, okay, it's time for me to be accountable for me and become about that authentic version of myself.
And I mean, this is the process of individuation that Carl Jung talks
Mm,
about. However, I would also say this is the process of awakening, which we are
mhm,
talking about, where we become aware that we are a product of our programming
mhm.
and we no longer wish to be that. We're saying it as if it was common and it would be great if it was. But the thing is, there's a
Yeah,
lot of people out
I
there
know.
not doing it, not awakening, not coming into awareness, not individuating, just putting their heads down and living out of their programming until the end of time. Our audience, you're the ones awakening. You're the one realizing it's time now to take responsibility for my personal sovereignty. It's
Yeah.
time now to decondition, to deprogram, and to figure out who I am and walk through the world less smoky, right? I
Hmm.
don't know that
Right.
the smoky mirror is never totally completely clear of smoke or ever totally completely clear of smoke, but maybe less smoky, maybe a little more reflective of the truth.
Yeah.
That's a
Right.
great goal.
In NLP, we teach about everybody operates from their own internal map of reality, meaning that no one is actually reacting to you. They're reacting from their map that is built upon their past, their beliefs, their wounds, their fears, and all their stories. So when you also think about it from a neuroscience point of view, the moment that we start reacting with that anger or the criticism or the judgment or even avoidance of people, because sometimes that's also a reaction, that emotional memory gets brought back up, and then that survival wiring, it kicks
Mhm.
in.
Mhm.
Our brain pulls up those stored experiences and projects them onto the present moment or projects them onto that person, right?
Yeah, and so suddenly we become reactionary, which means
Yeah.
that our nervous system has now engaged sympathetic systems, right? Our
Right.
nervous system has gone into reaction mode, mobilization mode, and
Right.
suddenly we're not thinking from self, we're thinking from reaction. It's really difficult when I feel like I'm offended by your
Uh-huh.
projection or what you've put out there. And when I'm
Mhm.
offended, then I become defensive. And
Yeah.
suddenly we're in a world of I'm defending and you're projecting or defending and then you start defending and it's this conflict. And we see this
Yeah.
all the time in people. And it's so interesting because Ruiz actually points out that we're all trapped in this thing that he calls personal importance. I was
No.
educated to understand it as personal fallacy. So people live in their own personal fallacy where you're the star. You're the star. He calls it personal importance. Personal importance, or taking things personally, is the maximum expression of selfishness because we make the assumption that everything is about me. Whew, when I read that, I was like, ouch. It's
Yeah.
it's not true, you know?
Yeah.
And during our domestication, as he says, we learn to take everything personally.
It's
And
so
so
true.
we make the agreement that everything is personal. And what we now do when we switch into the agreement of do not take everything personally is we decide everything isn't about me. What that person is saying truly isn't about me, it's about them. Whatever it is that's bothering them about me, it's because it's pushing on some sort of a wound or some sort of a feeling of being
Yeah.
misunderstood or something within themselves. And so whatever they're coming at me with, I really need not take personally.
Right. And I like how you brought up sovereignty early on, because that's what this really is about. And I think we could do a whole episode honestly on sovereignty. And I like thinking of sovereignty as being able to regulate your emotions, where you don't shrink or silence yourself or take responsibility for that person who is saying these words to you or attacking you. You stay rooted and grounded in your truth while still being able to offer compassion for that person's trigger or that person, right?
Yeah, emotional maturity is so important here. Emotional intelligence is so important here because there's
Yeah.
an immature version of that sovereignty where you're like, I'm standing rooted in my truth, and my
Yeah.
truth says that you're bull, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not really what we're talking about here. That is
Right.
another form of defense. What we're talking about
Mm,
is holding somebody's experience with compassion while
mhm,
holding your own with compassion as well. I am compassionately realizing that what's going on here doesn't have a whole lot to do with me.
mhm.
You're acting out of your agreements, you're responding out of your agreements. I'm not interested in swallowing that poison.
Yeah.
Would it be okay if I reflected back to you what I'm noticing here out of love and compassion for you? I know that as a therapist, I've experienced moments. I mean, obviously, most of the time I'm sitting witness to
Mm,
somebody's version of the story, right? And I have to really attend to that person. And sometimes I'm able to say to that person, and what do you think the perspective was from the other person in this conflict? And is it possible that we could separate yours and theirs rather than them
yeah.
being the same? On the other hand, I've also had experiences where clients have gotten really, really angry at me. And that's a big learning experience, right? When a client is angry at me and coming at me and yelling and freaking out at me, And I have to get really grounded. Thankfully, I am a pretty grounded therapist. I always make sure that I'm grounded before a session, but I have to get really, really grounded and I have to listen to what it is that they're saying, not
Right.
what it is that my nervous system is hearing. What am I feeling? What's activating? But let me get underneath that activation and hear what you're saying and let me reflect back to you. I can hear and see and understand how upset you are because I'm understanding the way that it's being interpreted, whatever this experience is. And I can validate the fact that they're upset without being offended, without being
Right.
offensive, right? I can own whatever it is that I need to own in the situation and also just turn the mirror back and ask them to look at it from this perspective or that. And I
Yeah.
think that conflict in therapy is a really healing opportunity. It's a really healing opportunity because out in the real world, out in the zoo, the wildlife, those people are just going to come at you. There's going to be
Mhm.
conflict immediately, right? But when you're talking to a therapist, hopefully a good one, they're saying to you, "I see what's happening here.
Mhm.
Let's talk it
Mhm.
through."
Mhm.
So this agreement really rung well with me that as a therapist, I don't take it personally. I'm able to see that other person and that other person acting out of their programming. But in real life, do I do the same? In real
Mhm.
life, am I always unoffendable? No.
Mhm. No, you're human. You're human.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
So that's just a really cool thing to think about. Like, where am I able to do it and where am I not? Where do I
Yeah.
need growth and where am I doing it pretty well already?
And I would say, Carly, even something I think people can relate to too is as parents, we've had our child at some point in time have a meltdown in public or like scream or like, no, mom, I want this toy or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
And we could automatically feel either judged, embarrassed, by the people around us, what they're thinking, and what's going on in their mind. And then also, in turn, when we do have those reactions, when we're too worried about somebody else and what they're projecting onto us, we're not even taking care of our child and what they're actually, screaming and wanting to be heard about.
Think it's interesting what you're saying because I actually don't think that a lot of the time people are projecting onto us. I
Mm,
think we're engaging in that cognitive distortion of mind reading. I think
well,
we're
yeah,
projecting
absolutely,
onto those people what we think. Oh my gosh, people are
yeah,
going to think that I'm a bad mom. People are going to think my kid sucks. We're projecting. We're
right,
mind reading. They may or may not have said or thought anything at all, but we're projecting. Right. So it's interesting because we can decide they're responding out of their own beliefs,
filters.
agreements, filters. Filters is a good one for this. And I don't have to know what they are. All I
Hmm.
have to know is that it really has nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
Right? And it's nice if you have the wherewithal to kind of think about like, what could it be? But it's again, it's mind reading in the end.
yeah,
All we
yeah,
really have to do is allow ourselves to take a step out, right?
yeah,
Disassociate from this activating experience
mhm,
and see that they are responding out of their own filters and that
mhm,
it really doesn't have anything to do with me and stay in my sense of self and stay with my being and focus on what I need to focus on. Allow my nervous system to stay calm. So, in this instance, my child can regulate to me. The more stressed out we are, the more stressed out our babies are. That's just a fact, right? That's how
yeah,
nervous systems work in the wild. So, yeah, it's a
yeah,
good I think that this is like that real life example. It offers the real life
yeah,
example to listeners to when somebody says something, whatever the circumstance. You can either immediately get activated and start that conflict or you can recognize, you can tell yourself, you can start to train your neurons
mhm,
to believe that Everybody is acting out of their own version of personal importance. Everybody is acting as the main character in their own movie. And I don't have to take that on. I can stand
Yeah.
and anchor in my sovereignty and know the truth and hold compassion for myself and compassion for that other person and step outside of the conflict and allow myself to maintain regulation. And the really interesting thing about this, I wrote it down, just by practicing this agreement to not take
Mm,
anything personally, we free ourselves from so many of the agreements that have caused us suffering. We free
mm,
ourselves from future agreements that we're no longer going to make, right? No more poison swallowing. But we can also go backwards in time and see where, wow, I agreed that I wasn't worthy because I let that person determine my worth. I agreed that I wasn't lovable because I let that person decide whether or not I felt loved. I agreed that I'm broken because I
mm.
let somebody break me.
Right.
Guess
Right.
what? You can go back in time. You can go back in time and rescue those parts. This is what Ruiz calls the Matote.
Mhm.
All the parts that are running around inside of us. What does he say? The Matote is all of the programming or all of the agreements, all of the voices that we hear in our kind of under layer that are in conflict with each other. So I may, with all of my education, which means worth to me, with all of my
Mhm.
skill, which means worth to me, I may think I am worthy of going out and starting a podcast. You know,
Mhm.
I am worthy of having people listen to me and talk to me. But there may be a part of me, an older, younger part, that doesn't actually believe it. There may be a
Right.
younger part that said, no, no, no. Remember that one time when we learned we weren't worthy? Remember that one time when we agreed to shut up? Remember that? And so I'm forging forward with all my sense of worthiness in this present moment, but there's some baggage. And maybe it causes imposter syndrome. Maybe it causes me to be really super critical when I'm editing. Maybe it is asking to be freed from that agreement because
Mhm.
I, in my sovereignty now, know that I am forging forward. And so what
Yeah.
do? I go backwards. I go find her. I go find that part. And I say, come here, sweetie. Let me rescue you. That agreement no longer holds. We don't take that personally.
Yeah.
Be free.
And yeah, I love that because when we do take things personally, I mean, we could even thinking about it like giving someone the password to our inner peace, right? Giving
Ooh,
someone the giving, where our sovereignty collapses because we hand over our emotional state over to someone else's unhealed world,
right,
right?
right.
And so, like, yeah, we're making ourselves the center of a story that isn't actually ours. And so I think that most people we aren't really reacting on a day-to-day basis. We aren't really when we have those reactions, right? We aren't reacting from the present moment at all. And I mean, we've talked about that, like coming to presence and coming to the being in the present moment. We're most of the time we're reacting from emotional history,
Right,
all the programming that's coming through. And I think
right.
having this type of awareness, having these conversations, listening to these types of podcasts, it helps us become more compassionate because then we realize that everyone is just really responding to their own pain, to their own stories, to their own conditioning. And
Mhm.
when we have the compassion, we are able to elevate the consciousness of the world, elevate um the frequency of love and what we want to see again more play out
Right,
and come through.
right. And if we're
Yeah.
talking from a mindful self-compassion perspective, if we're finding the inner ally within, right?
Mm,
We're choosing to be in the present. Okay, this is what's happening right now. We're not thinking about or talking about what's happened before. Okay, well, if I'm just looking at right now and I'm not judging it, perhaps it's not as bad as all my systems are telling me that it is.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we're connecting to the collective. And then we're finding our inner ally. We're finding our inner friend. We're allowing a voice inside to speak life and
Mm,
validation and love and compassion and kindness into our moment of stress.
yeah.
We can
Yeah.
heal. We can heal, friends. We can do
Yeah.
it. And, you know, it's so interesting because Ruiz in this chapter, he talks about how the mind lives in more than one dimension. The mind
True.
lives in the dimension where things unseen are heard. And so the Toltecs called it the reality of allies. The Indians called it the reality of gods. It's been called different
Oh.
things in different places. But when I read allies, I was like, our inner ally doesn't always have to be us. Sometimes we can just access a voice of God, a voice of spirit. And so while yes,
I love that.
we exist in the dimension of our kind of lower being, our shadow space, where parts are speaking from past wounds and past agreements, we also do have access to spirit. We have access to the voice of spirit. And
Yeah.
we can decide whether we tune it in or tune it out. And I think because of much of the programming that we have been given over the past hundreds of years, we've tuned it out. But I think there's this awakening happening right now where a few of us are interested in tuning it back in. We're not going to
Yeah.
pathologize it. We are not
Yeah.
losing our minds. We are gaining access to dimensions that we should and do have access to. Let's go. Let's listen in. Let's tune in.
Right. And I think also remembering that we are creators and we have creativity. And it reminded me just of this paragraph that I just want to read really quickly because it says the mind can also talk and listen to itself.
Hmm.
Right. So the mind is divided just as the body is divided. Just as you can say, I have one hand and I can shake my other hand and feel the other hand, the mind can talk to itself. Part of the mind is speaking and the other part is listening.
Hmm.
It is a big problem when 1,000 parts of your mind are all speaking at the same time. This is called the matote, remember?
Hmm.
And and so it just reminded me of that. Like, yeah, we are the creators. The mind can also talk. Like, we could create. Also, we have access, obviously, to God to come through and spirit. But also, He gave us the ability to create and create thoughts that are going to feed what we want to do. And like, we're kind of like getting a little bit like more broad with this conversation, but it is all about taking. When we realize that we shouldn't be taking things personally, we have the ability to create from within, right? And access divinity
Yeah,
as well.
yes. And we have divinity. We are divinity, right? As we've discussed,
Yeah.
and we have access to the divine. And so why not open up that access to the
Mm,
divine? Why not live in communication with the divine? Because the divine has your best and your highest at heart. And so if we're
yeah.
listening to the voice of someone that has our best and has our highest as a goal, guess where we're not going? Down.
Yeah.
We're not going into that personal hell on earth situation. We're
Mm,
elevating to that heaven on earth situation that we're all, I
I
think,
love that.
striving for here in this ascension process. We are
Yeah.
in the ascension process, folks. We are in
Yeah.
it right now on this earth, in this
It excites me.
moment, right? Don't wait. It's not
Hmm.
after we die, it's now.
No, right.
So
Yeah.
tune in. And when you have the voices that are all in conflict with that, I can't, I don't want to, it's not real, I don't know. Have compassion for them. See where they come from and set them free because they don't need to be there anymore. They really don't. They really
Right.
don't. Come into freedom. Come into heaven on earth. That's the invitation. Stop swallowing poison and living in your own personal hell and start tuning in to higher frequency. You are a higher frequency.
Woo.
Whew.
Ooh.
I can't not get esoteric about this. I can't
Yeah,
not get into
seriously, yeah.
this is the freedom. We have this density here, or we have this freedom, and we have choice. You've been
Mhm.
told all your life you don't have choice, and that's the agreement that you've made, and that's why you feel like you don't have choice. If you feel like you don't have choice, that's an agreement that you have made. Undo it. Break it.
Mhm.
Stop agreeing. Stop taking it personally. You
Yeah.
decide. You be sovereign. You stand in anchor in your sovereignty and elevate. You
Yeah.
can do it.
To kind of put into practice on a daily level, I think it's exactly what you said. When someone comes and projects, or they have a reaction to a question that you had or whatnot, take a pause, right? Or take a deep breath before trying to absorb that in,
Mhm.
before absorbing that person's energy. Remember, and you could ask, okay, they're speaking from something. They're speaking from their stress. Something got triggered. Their fear. They're feeling overwhelmed. There's things that are going on that I may not understand, but obviously this is not just because of the question that I came to them with or whatnot. They're speaking from their conditioning.
Right.
Anchor back into our sovereignty,
Yep.
right? This is their story. This is not my story.
Yep.
To help regulate our nervous system. Just breathe and realize we've all had a lifetime of conditioning. We're all working through this on as a collective and as individuals.
Yep.
So when we become aware of this, we become more compassionate. We could
Yep.
anchor in more of the higher frequency and help that person
Yeah.
because I think there is a responsibility when you have awareness of something, especially when it comes with people that are close to you, you're living with your partner, your husband, whatever. There is a sense of responsibility of helping that person. There is some sort of contract between you. You guys chose to get married, or you're in the situation for a reason. And how do you want this to play out? Are you going to be battling the entire time
Mhm.
within your relationship, or are you going to, like, okay, let's help each other grow and elevate, let's help each other rise.
Right. Right. And it's interesting that you mentioned the word contract. I think we'll do future episodes on the concept of soul contract, but it is interesting to consider if we are a soul having a human experience or a spirit having a human experience, and perhaps we chose to come have this experience, and
Mhm.
perhaps we chose who we would have these experiences with, then
Mhm.
perhaps we have something to learn, to gain, and to give in each one of these contracts that we've made with these
Right.
people. And if that's the case, could we be a little bit more curious about the relationship than combative?
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you don't believe that, it's just a nice thought to kind of to entertain. Like,
Sure.
if I think this way, right? If let's say that there is some sort of soul contract, maybe agreed to this mother or this experience, there must be some reasoning behind it. And what other option do I have but to play it out? How do I want to, you know, play this game out? Do I want to go the hard way and take the roughest route,
Yeah.
or do I want to, like, go higher in the game? Or you could think about it as a game, you could think about it as school, you could think about it like a movie, the main character. There's different ways you could think about it. But if just entertain that thought. I mean, that's for all listeners here. Entertain the thought. Like, what if I did have a soul contract?
Yeah.
And what if I did choose everyone around me? What could I learn from them? What could I be learning from this experience?
Right. Well, that's what Don Miguel Ruiz says. Everybody is just a reflection of yourself.
Mhm,
Everybody is an
mhm,
opportunity to learn something about yourself. And guess what? We have free will. We can choose to learn the lesson or not. We can choose to fulfill the contract or not. We come down here and we've got our free will. At least that's what I believe. And
mhm.
that means you can go as high or as low as you want to go. But think about why. Think about what
Right.
for. I really think that this just is a conversation that could keep going, and I hope it does. I hope it goes on in the comments. I hope that it goes on in your homes if you listen to this with somebody and want to talk about it. I hope it goes on in emails that we get in response to this. And in future, I hope that it goes on in small group live discussions that we're hoping to have with people. But let's close out with this. People, all beings of light who are tuning into this podcast today, just by practicing this agreement, you will break so many of the agreements that have held you captive to suffering. I invite you, we invite you, consider not taking offense. Thank you for spending this time with us today. If this conversation resonated with you, helped you feel seen, or expanded something in you, we would love for you to stay connected. Make sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who's also awakening on their journey. And if you feel called, please leave us a comment. It helps this message reach more people who are realigning with their truth, and it helps us feel connected to you. You can always reach out to us or join the conversation at realignedpod@gmail.com. We are building a community of humans waking up inside the dream, and we're so grateful you're part of it. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and stay realigned.